help them make their jobs easier. We've had the benefit of having fresh eyes looking at a lot of our processes, myself included. And so a lot of the things that we are asking for was with the intention of making things easier for our new staff coming in and the existing staff, and kind of modernizing a lot of our processes. Some of our increases come from contractual increases. Our insurance goes up every year, so we increase our insurance there. We took a closer look at our travel budgets. For a lot of our divisions, we did not necessarily budget specifically for travel, and we would just move money throughout the year. So this year we tried to true up what our travel budgets actually look like. And of course, our biggest is asking for the lease for the ERP. There were a couple of things that I noticed after the fact that we will have to fix in supplemental. In an attempt to move the Hoike contract to the right account, it kind of just disappeared, so we do have to put that back in, as well as the very last line of our budget, the lease for our postage machine for purchasing, also kind of just fell off, so we will have to fix that in supplemental.
Okay. Any questions on the synopsis? Councilmember Collin?
I do, and hey, by the way, who's our rock star that did our good investment strategies? Is she in the room?
Would be Nancy, our treasurer.
Thank you. Very, very good. Very, very good. I just want to see this thing about claims and auto adjustments. I was kind of like, only that? Like, what kind of claims and auto adjustments do we have?
Like damages to automobiles.
To our own automobiles?
Or other.
When people sue us?
Yeah,
okay.
when there's claims against us.
I would think we would have more than that. And then on our insurance, is that like property insurance? Is that the kind of insurance?
Property, liability, workers' comp.
Okay, and most of these we can really do in the items by items, but the Build America bond refunding, that's good that we were able to accomplish that. And who did that?
Nancy, our treasurer.
Okay, thank you again. Those kind of things really make a difference, so I just want to acknowledge and give a strong thumbs up. And then I just was looking at this little piece on it. Says, through the implementation of positive pay, we successfully prevented 5 fraudulent checks, totaling 119 in potential losses. So I assume that was real property tax payments?
No, it was checks that we issue out to vendors.
Okay.
This positive pay system allows us to upload our spreadsheets of what our checks were cut for, and if it doesn't match what's trying to be cashed, they notify us and check with us if it's a fraudulent check or not. And so far, 5 have come back as fraudulent.
So somebody was kind of trying to take money from us.
Correct.
Okay. And so that's good. And so who is responsible for moving us to positive pay?
That would also be Nancy, our treasurer.
Okay. Thank you again. All right.
Gold star.
Gold star. All right. Those are my questions.
Any other questions? Council Chair Raposo?
You mentioned Hoike moving the contracting. Can you expand on that a little bit?
So it used to be in an account that I can't remember off the top of my head, and I intended to move it into like other services and increase the dollar amount.
Under admin?
Yes.
Okay.
And then
Yeah, I did share with Rico yesterday, I believe, that we're going to have to relook at that amount and possibly the structure because of some loss of funding that they had. And I'm assuming that you guys are in agreement that we need to cover all of these community meetings and all of what they're doing right now, and they're not getting compensated. So we can have that discussion, but definitely we need to look at increasing their compensation. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, we'll go into the budget. Okay, we'll move into the admin budget. Any questions on the admin budget? I had a question on the property insurance, terrorism. It's a new item. What is that for?
In case it's not for acts of war, but it was a very low cost item for something that could be very helpful to have. We've never taken it in the past because it was more expensive, but for whatever reason it was cheaper this year. I would have to, OCA helps us with the actual insurance policies. So I don't actually know offhand.
Oh, we can send a question
Yeah.
over.
I guess I have a follow-up on that.
Councilmember Cowden.
So on our insurance, and then when I hear terrorism, I mean, does any of that, do we have cyber insurance? Is
We do.
that, and is that in the IT department that I would see that, or is that in the?
Nope, it should be on page
It's on page 41, cyber liability.
Liability.
Okay, let me look at that number. Yeah, I see the terrorism there.
Under liability insurance.
Property, aircraft, drone, crime, fidelity.
The account above that
Oh,
one.
account above that.
Mhm.
All right, 108,000. All right. That's about what I would expect it to be.
Any other questions? I had a question on special projects, SOV appraisals.
So that's also tied to our insurance. That's to appraise our buildings. Our statement of values is more accurate. Last fiscal year, in light of the Lahaina fires, our insurance brokers were letting us know that we should estimate on the high side because we didn't have a very accurate statement of values. And so we're doing it piecemeal. So we're doing about 15 to 20 buildings a year. And then by the time it rolls back around, we'll be back at the beginning. So OCA is taking the lead on that project as well.
Follow-up question.
Councilmember Bulasan.
If you know off the top of your head, if you don't, how many buildings do we have?
I don't know off the top
Okay,
of my head.
no problem. That's fine. You don't have to send that number.
Any other questions for admin?
Is everybody happy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, if not, we'll move on. Next up is accounting.
I have a question.
Councilmember Cowden.
So, normally we get our audited county financial report before we go into the budget. I understand because we had such a disruption in our accounting department last year, we were almost a year late. We were probably 9 months late, but we didn't get it this year either. So, where are we at on that?
So we're almost done. We fully are on track to have it done before we submit the supplemental.
Okay.
But you're correct, because of that delay, we couldn't start. We would normally start in July for fiscal year 24. We weren't able to start till September because 23 closed in August. So we were already
Behind.
to start.
Okay, and then are we on track to be doing pretty well on it? Are we passing fine? Okay. I will again say I hope we get this really great executive summary. I think Renee was our last person. She did such a good executive summary. So I find that incredibly helpful for me as I look to do my work in the year, and it gives me an overall understanding. So I'm hoping we got a good executive summary in there and again. And all right, so I'll look forward to seeing that probably in a couple weeks. Hopefully. And I guess if I could ask one more question. Our staffing, is it stable now? And our team for accounting pretty solid and strong?
Mm-hmm. They're fully staffed.
Okay, and then excited about ERP, I forget what that stands for.
Enterprise resource planning.
Enterprise resource planning, so that's where we're changing over our accounting. And so how long are we anticipating that window of putting it in place will take? Probably a year? I don't know. It's not easy. Is that
Probably longer than a year.
probably longer than a year? So we will do parallel processes for a while, or we'll still be on our current system for a year, and then once it's up and ready to go, I mean, will we kind of do it parallel, or do we take the big jump?
I think the intent is a big jump.
Yeah, Del, maybe just come up and just explain how other counties have done it. Yeah, I don't think we just flip the switch and take the big jump. I think it's by department possibly, or on us. That's what I thought it was a long time ago, but it could be different now.
For the record, Del Sherman, IT manager for the county. So with this kind of system, in that it's our core financial system, it's hard to take it in baby steps, because it's not as though as we could run our operations on two different financial systems simultaneously. You would have to have some means of keeping them in sync, which would be more challenging than just cutting over all at once. So it's probably a 3 to 5 year project to pull this off in its entirety. Huge project. But
Okay.
Our plan is to have conducted extensive training, testing, and then at some point we'll flip the switch and we'll move completely from one system to the other as far as our financial management goes.
So I have a follow-up on that. What is our strategy for holding records from, I know it's probably since 1980 or whatever, but like, how do we hold the past records when we shift over to the new system?
So the typical approach from a vendor is to suggest, well, just archive your old data, and then if you ever need it, you can go dig it out of the archive and use it that way. I'm opposed to that. I think that data is a really valuable resource. So this is still in the phase where the various services being provided by whichever vendor gets selected are being negotiated. But my focus is I want to bring as much of that data over as we possibly can. I don't want to lose anything. That information is so valuable in helping us to make projections, to make good decisions about things based on what's happened in the past. So we don't want to lose any of that.
Okay, I'm pleased to hear that, because I think having continuity is really critical. And so the county is getting older and older, and so we have turned over staff a handful of times, and so institutional memory is important, but if we have archived memory, it's important too. So when you're talking about, have we not determined who's going to be our provider yet? So ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, that is not the name of a program, that's the name of a project.
Okay.
You guys are all invited for soup.
That's four soups. Oh, I thought we, three. We hit 3 yesterday. That's
Yeah.
4.
I get one and he gets two.
Oh,
Yeah, I get two, you get one.
I like French onion.
I don't know where the soup thing came from, but I'm thinking steak and lobster.
Oh my
God, sorry guys, Rainbow Warriors.
Rainbow Joe's.
So that's just the name of the plan, the project. So we haven't determined who's going to be our provider.
That's correct. We're still in the selection process with this RFP. We're looking at finalists, but have not yet made a decision, and it will be some months yet before we reach that point.
Okay, and then who are our, can you say who we're looking at?
I cannot.
Okay, all right. But we are looking at some really stable, solid ones.
We are. What I can say is all of the top players in this industry did submit proposals. So we're entertaining systems from anyone whom we would consider to be a contender in the industry.
Okay, I can make a small request. When we get financial statements, like at the end of the year, if we could just have a delta column so we know where the changes are from the beginning to the end, that would be very helpful, I find.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
You're saying, like in this budget, that they would have the original budget, which is last year's, the mayor's request, and then a difference?
Well, really, we get something where we see past when we look at the what we did last year. We have an annual budget, like I worked with you on that, right? What's the name of that document that we went through? That's our annual, we look at our expenses. Like, it's nice if we were able to just see if we're at where we thought we were going to be. Like, I like to have that delta right in there to be able to, sometimes there's columns that seem like so basic that aren't there. It's hard to really look when we're looking through a very large document, whether it's our inventory or any of those kind of things. It's nice if we see a variance line. That's what I would call it, a variance line. Almost any report I've seen in all my years of working in computer science or working with business, we have a variance. So you see the difference between what you had, what you have, and what you expect. So, like, having a variance report is...
It's been a system limitation for sure, because what we submit is the way we're able to pull the reports from the system, because
Right.
the system's old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would just be something that, to me, is standard, seeing the variance between what was or what is expected. Usually when there's a difference, usually you're seeing a delta somewhere in whatever report is put out. So that would be...
For this budget?
No, we get reports throughout the year.
Oh, because staff does put together a variance report for this, yeah.
Yes, we look at that, but then our staff puts that together, and I really appreciate it, and I look at that. And also in their individual documents, they also put their variance in there, so that's good. Sometimes we get these very large reports, and it's easier just not to look at it, like for example, our inventory. When you see the inventory report, it would be nice that's land, that's equipment, a lot of things like that. Maybe your department doesn't necessarily handle that, but to see a variance, how much more we've spent or have in our equipment from this year, from last year, you see a dollar change. So when you look at your revenue and your expenses, you also need to look at that against your inventory. That's like basic bookkeeping. You look at your inventory, and I don't see those things coming together, so it helps to understand why when we're spending so much money, well, maybe we've increased a lot in our inventory of equipment or land or other things. So that's where I did business for a long time. That's like a basic in business. Income, expense, and variance. I mean, an inventory, then variance. So, too much detail, I guess, right now, but I'm just wanting to make sure. I'm not sure where the input goes into what we look at when we're planning what the output is on the reports that we'll get, so. Okay.
We'll keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Any other questions for accounting? If not, we'll move on to IT. Questions for IT? Council Chair Raposo.
Thank you. So this is where is this where the Huike money is, in the Granicus streaming?
No. So it's not in here at all.
Oh.
Because when I moved it, it just fell off the radar and I didn't put it back in.
Oh, okay.
So it's not. It's,
So on page 55, on our master page 55, I think budget page 38, we have two items: Granicus website for 40,000 and Granicus streaming for 167. And I apologize, I should know this, but what again? So Granicus, we pay Granicus to do the streaming.
So the line item in there for Granicus streaming covers all of the online console agenda and video archive, and the live stream and captioning. So that's covered by the Granicus streaming. The Granicus website, not really connected to the streaming piece at all. It just so happens that the county's website, Kaua'i.gov, is also hosted and maintained by the company Granicus.
Oh, got it.
So it shows up in our budget as a separate line.
Okay. And this is with a meeting with Huike a few days ago, myself and Mr. Bulasan. Was there a time where we paid Granicus and Granicus paid Huike?
Yes, that's correct. Many years back, the arrangement was Huike had a contract, or I guess the actual flow was Granicus contracted with Huike. Huike would provide the services that we see them doing here today, and then they would bill Granicus, and Granicus would pay that. Sometime around COVID, that process fell apart, and either Huike stopped billing Granicus or Granicus stopped paying. I'm not sure how that transpired. We didn't know until more recently, at which time we met with Huike and negotiated a contract with them. They gave us an hourly rate. Here's what we want for our services, and we plugged that into our budget so that we would now be able to work directly with Huike,
Right.
not through
Right, and
Granicus.
I think that's probably the better way we get more control. The problem is there is a gap that we paid Granicus.
Yes.
Granicus didn't pay Huike, which means Granicus either owes us that money or they owe Huike the money. Is that something we can follow up on? I thought we had this discussion prior, but maybe I didn't make myself clear. But there is definitely that gap where Huike did not get paid and they did, and their services continued. So, and staff, maybe we can make that as a communication, but I'm not sure how we pursue that, but I think that definitely needs to be looked at. Because we paid for a service and the middleman got the money, but the middleman never paid the contractor. So if we can take a look at that, I'd appreciate it.
I think that's a prudent thing to do, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I would agree that that should be done.
Yeah, okay.
We talked with Huike about that, and my understanding was they would pursue that with Granicus since the legal engagement was between those two parties and didn't involve the county directly. But as you observed, we did pay Granicus.
Yeah, we paid them. I mean,
So-
so we do definitely have a stake, because if Granicus got our money and they never paid, then we should definitely make that right.
Well, it doesn't set well with me just from, it's just not right. But what recourse we may have, I don't know, but we'll follow up.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Arcade?
Okay, on page 55, the line item for Barracuda at 225,000, I forget what Barracuda is.
Barracuda is a company that provides numerous different kinds of services to include spam filtering, email filtering.
Okay.
They also provide the utilities that we use to archive all of our emails. So
Okay.
they are the online repository for all of our historical data. Those are the main things that they do.
Okay, and then the 335,000 for cybersecurity, so this is in addition to what we saw on the administrative page. Can you tell us just a little bit about what is in that cybersecurity?
The admin page was for insurance.
Yeah,
This is for actual
software, right. So which company are we with for that?
So we're careful not to name the
Okay.
company publicly, just
Okay.
as a precaution to not release kind of what our inner workings are.
All right.
But that line item pays for several different suites of cybersecurity software that we have employed to protect our network.
Okay, and then yesterday when we had Kaua'i Emergency Management Agency in here, we talked about cybersecurity with their ITR team, their military team coming in. So I'm excited that you guys are going to be working with them, and so do you have anything to say on that particular element? Do we see that anywhere in the budget, or how is that being managed?
Yeah, that engagement isn't something that's costing the county anything, so you won't see it named specifically anywhere. But I can say that we take every opportunity to engage with these outside parties, whether it's the Air Force or other federal departments, to do penetration testing and external testing of our network. So it's kind of cool that they offer those programs, and we jump on every single one we can.
I'm very enthusiastic about that. I'm trying to see your travel budget. I'm looking again where that is here.
Page 55.
Page 55, I see training, airfare, a little bit there. I mentioned to Reiko the other day, like, I'm hoping a member of our IT team, our leadership, or our main cybersecurity person can consider coming to NACO Philadelphia this summer. Almost every event that we go to, I try to go to the AI, the Artificial Intelligence and Information Technology forums, and they're very powerful, and usually the room is largely filled with the chief information officers. And so the learning is so powerful, and it's also a little unnerving at our vulnerability, everybody's vulnerability, though they also highlight small counties. So I would love it if one of our team could go to NACO. I will send, I think I did send to Rachel, but I can send also to Dell that the NACO conference, I don't know that they've got it all populated out yet, but it would be, I think, really great if we could have Dell or Mike or somebody go so that I can really feel confident that we've got it taken care of, because there is just glaring warnings in those concentrated meetings. And so it's a big focus for National Association of Counties. Fire and cybersecurity are some of the two largest topics. And our James Gore, you know, in one of the AI meetings, I think NACO before last, he felt it was the biggest threat to counties, and that with AI, generative AI being able to move around a lot of how our software goes, that it's really, really important to be on top of it. So if one of them came and they were able to say, Felicia, don't worry about it, then maybe I could stop worrying about it. Because I listen and I'm like, sounds concerning. So I want to just put that in there. All right, so that's the thought. That's, you nodded your head, so you can consider that. Okay.
Council Vice Chair Cooley.
On master page 54, page 37 at the top, internet cable data. So it went up 112,000, 185% increase. You have a list there of how it breaks down. Is this the increase because of new services, increased rates, or more volume? What caused that increase?
The 10 gigabyte internet uplink is new, and the other ISP cost is new.
So the 113,000 there.
Yeah.
Okay. And then dues and subscription, same kind of thing. It went up 100,000. So everything just increases, or
The last three are new. The last three line items of the description, those three are new. And the rest of the difference is contractual increases in the above.
Thank you.
Councilmember Carvalho.
Just to follow up on that, the LIMS program. I mean, how with that?
So previously, LIMS was handled as a CIP project.
CIP, right?
As was observed in our CIP meetings, that project is now at its conclusion, where we're transitioning from CIP to operating. So the LIMS funding was moved from CIP to become an operating expense. So we've allocated two line items to LIMS. One pays the recurring cost for the software we use in support of LIMS from a company called Novatics. The product itself is Elements XS. And then the other line item supports some contract employees who are LIMS developers, who we use to supplement internal staff in further building out our various different LIMS components.
So overall, that program is moving forward, right?
It is moving forward, yes. It is expanding every year. It gets bigger and bigger. So we're happy with the direction it's going. I think our approach was a good one, rather than spending millions of dollars up front and trying to affect change in a huge leap. We've spent less up front, and the change has been gradual, but it's given every department an opportunity to kind of adopt the new processes and come up with new workflows. So I think it's been pretty effective.
Okay. And land information management system, just to make sure everybody knows the LIMS program, which is great.
Going back to the 10 gigabyte internet uplink service, that's going to be a recurring item every year, or is that like a one-time expense?
So that'll be recurring every year. I think we reached a point as a county where the services we provide to our public through the internet have expanded tremendously. We use that internet connectivity to support our public safety components, so our fire trucks, police vehicles, all connect back to internal servers over that link. And the different things that these various components are doing today has evolved a lot over time, where previously it was more textual based, but now they're doing things like big file uploads and video and various high bandwidth consuming kind of applications. So we've needed to take the jump from our slower 1 gig connections that we have at present to the 10 gig to support these things.
I have a follow-up on that.
Councilmember Cowden.
When does that start? When are we making that jump?
So once this budget is approved and we have that funding, then we'll engage in a competitive process for various different internet service providers to provide that service to the county.
So probably in the first or second quarter of, or the fall to winter of 2025?
I certainly hope first.
First quarter of our
That's my hope. We're full speed ahead on that. The only slowdown will be is if we have issues with the providers being able to comply with our asks. But it needs to be done soon.
Okay. I have just one last question. 6 years ago, in my first budget, it seems like we didn't have an awful lot of these capabilities. And we had a big goal of bringing ourselves up into the present time. How far along would you say we are? Like 50%, like 70%? I mean, I think when we do the ERP, that will be a very big piece. We had Workday, very big piece. Where do you see us along our goal of being able to bring a lot of what had been paper and pencil to a modern system? Are we pretty far there, or are we halfway there?
I think in the last 5 years or so, we've made tremendous progress. It is really hard to quantify because every time you think you're getting close, then you discover something new or some other technology emerges that you can adopt and make it even better. So I feel like we're never done.
Yeah.
But I think the state of the county today, from a technology perspective, is just light years ahead of where we started out maybe 5-6 years ago.
Yeah. That's how it seems to me. I just really want to say good job so far, that you guys are doing a lot, and I'm pleased with your growth, and it's another yay, along with our treasurer there in the back. Yay. Yeah. Thank you.
The other services line item, is that the Ho'ike?
The one that went to 1?
Yeah, okay. Any other questions for IT? If not, we'll move on. Treasury. Council Vice Chair Cooley.
The vacant position, position 283. I do see that on as of March 15th, you had interviews scheduled. So have you had those interviews, or when are they happening?
They're happening next week.
And you have several candidates to interview?
We have 4.
Well, wonderful. Good luck with that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes. Can I? It's Nancy, right? Yeah. Thank you for what you've done, and in your investing for what we have, seeing it go from a little less than 500,000 anticipated to, if I'm remembering correctly, 8.7 million. I mean, that was extraordinary. Is that something that you feel confident that is able to replicate, or is that a one-off? I mean, I know that how much of that is part of your job, or? I mean, it seems like it's a very well done job.
Thank you. Nancy Robles, Treasurer. It's a combination of both, I'd say. We hadn't been paid interest from a lot of our financial institutions that we were putting our funds in, and we were able to successfully negotiate some pretty good interest rates there. Also investments, the investments are due to the market, you know.
Yeah, right.
So we did a lot of long-term investing when the rates were really good. So it should last for the next 5 years or so, but, you know, the market changes pretty much every 7 years, so you can expect it to start going down after a couple of years.
And do you have, this I just don't understand the structure totally, when we try and get bonds or any of those sort of things, are you part of that team that helps to look at what interest rate we're paying?
Yes.
Okay. And then what do you see in the direction for the next year or so on that? Because that was a big issue at National Association of Counties too, of possibly losing the tax exemption on our infrastructure bonds. And I know when we're doing seemingly more and more borrowing of money. So when we buy, say, a helicopter, are you part of it helping with that finance decision?
Not with those financing decisions. We haven't issued a GEO bond here, so I wouldn't do, I mean, I would assist with the housing bonds, but the GEO bonds is, you know, more what I oversee, make sure that the debt, you know, is paid. But we haven't gone out for a GEO bond in a while. The recent refinance we did was strategic in anticipation of the new administration taking what we call our subsidy for that particular bond away. That was a very special bond.
And that's the Build America bond?
Yeah, the Build
Okay.
America bond. So the only thing we're looking at in the future is we also have a Recovery Zone Economic Development Bond, the RZEDB. And that one wasn't refinanced because it didn't quite pencil out right, but that's one that we're looking at if we have an opportunity to refinance that. For the same reasons of collecting our subsidy and possibly not being able to in the future, we may do that. But yeah, it is very concerning that we may lose our tax-exempt bond ability.
Yeah, that seemed like a serious situation. And I know my first year doing this, I'm kind of thinking about Councilmember Holland in learning some of these things. We had lost our entire Treasury Department. How's the stability of the Treasury Department? Is it still 3 positions? Yeah,
Four,
including the clerk,
myself,
and
yeah.
5 maybe? Yeah, so are we staffed up?
Very, very stable, staffed up and stable.
We just have that one vacancy.
Yeah.
We just talked about.
And you're happy?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for Treasury? If not, we'll move on. Motor vehicle. Council Vice Chair Cooley.
Yeah, 4 vacant positions, master page 62, closer to the top a little bit. Position 241, driver license examiner 1, vacant since July of last year, 242 days. You have it budgeted at the bottom range, and then the recruitment status was eligible list established, so.
We have someone hired effective April 1st.
Oh, you have someone fired for April 1st. And then the next one is 250, motor vehicle finance responsibility clerk. Oh, okay, that's $1 funded because that's state funded.
Correct.
And recruitment just closed on March 19th.
Correct. That was in internal recruitment. We had no applicants, so we've had to put it back out. So it's open right now and should close next week, Wednesday.
Open for outside now.
Open, yes.
Okay. And then the next one is 159, supervising license inspector. So you have that 6-month funded, but as far as recruitment status, it says no activity. So at some point in the near future, you're going to recruit and try to get somebody on board within the 6 months of the first year. Yes. Okay. And then the last one is position 162, driver license examiner 2, vacant since last July. I think last year it was 6-month funded, but this year you have it fully funded at the low range, and you have the same thing, eligible list established. So.
We have someone in there as of March 6th.
Oh, so already started in March. Okay. After March 15th, that's why it doesn't show in the report. Yeah, the next day. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions, Councilmember Cowden?
This I probably want to talk to Jeremy too. Like, I have a few questions. Like, what is, do we have the capacity right now to permit commercial driver's licenses? Now we lost that like last year and over COVID. Can we do testing for commercial driver's licenses yet?
Good morning. For the record, Jeremy Lee, VRL manager. I apologize. I'm trying to fight a cold.
Okay.
Councilmember, thank you for the question. We had a period of time where we didn't have an employee to fulfill that role. We've since solved that problem for probably the better part of 2 years now. And we have continued to issue CDL permits and licenses continually.
Okay, good. And then, so is there a wait time when people want to get a CDL license? Like what, how long is, if somebody, they have to make an appointment to get the license, right? So how long is that wait time?
If you're talking about the permit process, ma'am, there is maybe a 1 week wait to get into the permit room to take a CDL test, and to get a road test, the skills testing portion, it's about a week.
Okay, excellent. Because there was a real crisis for a while mostly during the COVID window. I think we lost all of that. And then how about just for getting a regular road test for a driver's license? It seemed like it was last year, maybe it was the year before. It was like almost 4 months.
That's right. During that period of time, we had lost our primary road test personnel, and we were in a hole because our horizon for the booking is about 1.5 months to 2 months out at that time. It put us in a deficit of about 4 months, like you reflected. We've since corrected our practices of hired staff and created a temporary assignment listing from our front office that have been trained to help fulfill if we have an outage. So at current, we have our horizon for booking an appointment for a Type 3 road test, our licenses, about 1 week.
Okay, well that's excellent also. So I just really want to recognize, that is good. We don't hear about things when it's working. We hear about things when it's not working. So people don't call me up and say, hey, in case you were curious, my son had no trouble getting signed up to get his first driver's license or whatever. We hear about it when they can't get it. So, and then how about then wait time for general scheduled DMV things, like when people need to get license plates? Like sometimes people have to wait all day. Sometimes might be, how's that going?
I don't know if you or other members are aware, but we recently opened a DMV office in Kaua'i.
Yes, that's my next question about that one. I'm aware. I was there.
We have wait times of same day.
Okay.
Most services that the DMV offers in the motor vehicle realm are within 1 to 2 business days of availability. The only thing that is a little bit further out than what we had hoped it to be is getting into our permit room. Our permit room has a high volume of need because it shares multiple different service requests to get into that limited area. We were lucky enough to deploy a online permit testing tool, which we're helping to ramp up the media around to hopefully get less people who need to physically come into the DMV to get to our permit needs. Get some of those people to be able to get those records produced at home.
So when we had so many people, we had a big surge of people who moved here from the continental United States, typically bringing their vehicles, so changing their license plates out. That was, some people were saying it took a year. Is that is all good now?
If I reflect just on our appointment availability across the board, which would include out-of-state vehicle title transfers, we were within 1 to 2 business days. We were never 1 year out.
Okay, well, where I get that is I was sitting there looking at parking lots in Kilauea with, out-of-state plates, and then I'm asking them, when are you changing your plates? And telling them that there's a short window, and actually trying to help some of them. I don't know. I don't have to get lost in that. You're able to do it quickly now, and maybe you always were, and they just somehow couldn't get through that hurdle. And then my last question is the strategy for the incremental utilization of the Kaua'i DMV. Thank you so much for getting that opened as a person who lives on the North Shore. Are you getting a lot of people scheduling? Is that working pretty well? How many hours a day is it typically being utilized?
It's a schedule that is 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and it's progressively gotten busier and busier. Because this is a first-time satellite deployment for the county and in particular the DMV, we had a strategy of progressively increasing capacity of the utilization of that location. Matter of fact, just yesterday I was asked to provide analytical data about that, which we've been tracking all along. In the beginning of March, we began a media campaign helping to promote the Kaua'i. Prior to that, it was basically word of mouth. And we did that strategically so we could build capacity, and if we had any flaws with the deployment, that we would be able to capture those things at lower volume, less impact to the customer.
But so when we staff it, are they there 5 days a week, all day? The staff
that's
is
correct.
there. So then they're probably pretty busy.
They're quite busy.
Okay, I must have misunderstood it, the blessing. I thought people would get scheduled, and then if we had people on the schedule, we'd drive up and do it.
No, ma'am. It's a fully staffed, full-time employment location. It's
Okay.
a primary work location.
All right, great. Well, there's another good job. Yeah, thank you.
Council Chair Raposo.
I have a comment, and it's actually for the public. You know, the DMV, the motor vehicle renewals. I do mine online, and I think it's like $3 extra. But I just wanted the public know the turnaround is about a week, or less than a week. You get the sticker and the new registration in the mail. So it works well, and I encourage the public to utilize that. $3 is less than the cost of gas to get potentially from your house to the DMV office. So utilize it. It works. It's quick. I don't know how you guys are doing it, sir, but it's working well, because I just did mine, and again, I do it for our 2 vehicles, and we get the hard copy and the sticker in less than a week from the time we hit send. So thank you for that.
And the kiosk in Safeway is instant.
Yeah.
You do it, the sticker comes right out. You will put it on your car.
Those are 2
There's no lines at the kiosk.
Online payment services and kiosk-based Princeville, Kaua'i Safeway, the Kaua'i Safeway, and in our office, we hope to site one on the west side again to have that community-based kiosk available for the community there.
Where was the west side you said?
Potentially.
They don't have one yet.
Oh, you take it up, yeah.
Used to
Because
be
I remember you used to
Ishihara.
have an issue, yeah.
Yeah, it used to be in Ishihara.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
still working to site one.
Maybe at the professional building out there.
Oh, yeah.
That'll be nice.
That's an idea.
Would be good to have one out there.
Yeah, even at maybe like right where the police station is or something like that. Yeah, I find it's going quickly when I use the kiosk. I've used the kiosk because I like that instant gratification if it's right there. Has that effectively reduced the need for staff, or maybe we have to have somebody handling all the background of the equipment?
Thank you for the question. The DMV is, my estimation, the highest customer-facing service that the county has. We have a ton of work to get through, and even though we're the closest we've ever been to being fully staffed in my 3 years of being there, we have an immense amount of work that has to get done. And if we have the opportunity to defer work into online services or community-based services, we are still working extremely hard and diligently to keep up with back office mail, high volume dealers, bank work, and the regular services that come through to the window. So I use data a lot to be able to track what we do and how we do it, and any future decision making is from a database approach along with other metrics. But by my estimation, we have a need to continually build capacity in our existing team members to prove that we've done everything that we can to serve our community in a timely manner and provide equitable service delivery. And until I get to that point, I am not going to say that there is a need for additional resources there. I think there's work to be done in our office in that regard. But we have an immense volume of work coming in.
Well, thank you for all you do, Kaua'i.
Any other questions for motor vehicles? If not, we'll move on. Next up, real property assessment.
I have a kind of
Council Chair
a broad and overview question for Scott. I think last year was his first time. Was it his first budget last year?
No, this is his first budget.
Oh, this is his first budget.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, maybe he came over. We got introduced to him at some item. But I just kind of wanted to ask him if it's okay to give us his observations. You know, like Chelsea said earlier, you know, we get different sets of eyes looking at our processes. So I kind of wanted to just get an overview, if that's okay, from Scott to see what we had. I know he had some very aggressive suggestions or recommendations early on and some potential changes. Just curious as to where we're at before I start asking questions about the budget.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Scott Turek, County Real Property Tax Manager. The County of Kauai Real Property Assessment and Collection sections sits okay right now. That being said, every county jurisdiction, city, Big Island, Maui, it takes time to get things right as well. So I think when I came in June of 24, we are going through the process of reorganizing, rewriting position descriptions, rerouting work assignments to the various sections. When I came in, I noticed that the county just did it because they did it, or you were assigned it because you always had it. I'm taking a different approach about assigning work to where the work should be done, and then deciding whether or not we are right-fitted in employee count, et cetera. So we recently have just gone through HGA regarding a potential reorg in the office to both update PDs, so forth, because we are a relatively short, small shop. Some people may need to wear two hats in the future. So we are in the process of rewriting PDs to address the single man operation of certain functions that can be maybe overlap with other people. And if in the case that you cannot, that's the opportunity for us to regather with the director and see if we need to expand positions going forward. But we're in that process of going through reorg right now.
Okay, I apologize for dropping this on you without letting you know. But, you know, Chair, if I can just ask, because I think, you know, we rely on the real property tax for pretty much for everything in our county. And I want to make sure that we utilize our systems to the best potential, so we can make sure we're collecting the right amount of taxes from the right people. When we were at NDC, I had the occasion to talk to some Maui council members, and my concerns have always been making sure that we're accurate on assessments, because some people's assessments are high, some people's assessments are low. Now, with understanding we have that 3% cap, so there is definitely going to be that differences. But they use a system where, and I don't know how this works, but they have a system where they can typically using their computer, their desktop, to look at individual properties. And using that desktop, they can determine whether or not the properties that we are assessing are the same as the structures that are on the property. There have been, you know, properties expand or, you know, and build extra structures that never get captured. But they have an ability, Scott, and I'm asking you if this is even possible, they have an ability to take a look by parcel and actually see what's on that property. How to do that, I don't know. Is that something that is available, and is that something that would help us in being more accurate in our assessments?
Thank you for that question, Chair. It's a very good question. That's something that Maui initiated maybe 5-8 years ago. Whether they still do it today or not, I'm not sure. But
They're still doing it, according to the council
okay,
members.
so that's called DTR, desktop review. That is something that we do not have the technology right now, but it's not like you couldn't get it. It's available with multiple vendors right now. What they do is they take aerial imagery with the camera system, and according to IAO, which is International Association of Assessing Officers, they have a standard 3.3.4 that requires or will ask the jurisdiction to review properties every 4 to 6 years. That's the requirement. So you would have to take our 30,000 some odd parcels and break it out by sections. You're going to see this house every 4 to 6 years, and you use aerial imagery and staff computer to do it, because physically, if we have to go see these properties every 4 to 6 years, you would have to have a bigger staff. Therefore, you use imagery which is at least 6 inches or better, which we do, and you can use it, desktop review, as a much faster way to expedite seeing a home. So the standard is you're going to have to see at least 2 sides of every property. So a computer system, a screen will basically show you the 4 directional sides using pictometry imagery, along with the camera's records and its sketch. So basically you're working on 2 big screens or 1 big screen, and you actually are physically looking at a property, next property, to see the orthos from all 4 sides and whether or not it matches the sketch. When we initially did it in Maui, there was a huge number of properties that were found were not correct according to the county records. That will cost you software maybe in the $30,000-$35,000 range annually, more initially in the first year. But you're also going to need a staff member to do it. So it's not like AI is going to pick it up and tell you which one is incorrect. You're going to have to manually make those changes. But I would say if you're in it for a position and the software, you may be in it for $70,000 a year, and your return on investment, it could be initially it's probably going to be tenfold. To be honest, you're going to catch a lot in the first 5 rounds, and then it'll taper off. But I think in the first 5 years, you're going to get a big investment because you're going to find that the records are not maybe always correct. What would you say?
When you say imagery, is that imagery that's readily available now using Google or Pictometer or whatever?
Yes.
Or does that mean we got to go contract out some satellites to take the pictures?
Thank you for that question, Chair. Right now, you have an E911 contract with police. Real property over the past year, I believe we're asking to take additional funding and do a little better imagery so that it's coordinated with actually surveys on the ground so that the line work, et cetera, gets better. So the parcel layer will get tighter. Sometimes you see your line in the road because, the road is round. So you actually take coordinates and it's going to make the line work a little bit better. But we already have the imagery. It's just a matter of getting the software from a certain company, whatever company you choose, and actually go parcel to parcel to clean up the data.
So you're saying $35,000 for the software, a staff member?
The staff would be a Unit 13, SR16. That's probably $48,000, $49,000, $50,000.
So 50,000 plus benefits. So
yeah.
even if you was even at 100,000, 135,000 a year, we would be able to start the process to.
Yeah, and I mentioned for Maui County, the first couple of years, the numbers were incredible. But as you get them correct, I mean, unless there's further changes to a house, you're probably not going to get a big investment over time. Your initial investment will be a pretty big return. In fact, there's software out there right now, including our GIS analyst right now might be able to do it, is to do the raw data search for everything that's not really matching. You can take building outlines and find out which ones are major changes and concentrate on those first. That would be my recommendation, is to the first swath, the first year, just take major changes and work on that first. I think the investment would be big. The return would actually pay for itself.
So, again, I'll round up just to be, let's say we went 150, and it would take you a while to get this thing implemented. Even at like funding it, even half funding, 75,000 would give you time to get the contract, the vendor, and get somebody hired up. Can you take a look at that for me? And
Yeah,
Chelsea,
I think
can we
if the
explore
council
that?
would want to do that.
The Maui council member was quite impressed at what the return was. It was 7-figure. And of course, it's still the same amount of parcels, right? Even though Maui has many more parcels, they can only get to the same, one person can only get to the same amount of parcels. So I think it would be pretty much similar to what they're getting.
I would add too that when the change is made, right, and the assessments are corrected at the higher level because of the additional facilities on site, year after year we continue to collect at the higher rate. So the investment will continue to return. So it's until they take those facilities down, which you wouldn't, right? You expanded your property for, more space,
I'm just curious, what type of improvements were they looking at? Like just an additional garage, or like full-on additional like housing units that were built on the property? Like
The first year we did it, the vendor highlighted Maui County because we caught one property on conservation oceanfront land, and I believe the back taxes were close to $1 million for that one individual. It was omitted for like 7 years.
It was a house that was built on a parcel that wasn't getting assessed for having a building.
Because on state lands, you're not required to get a building permit.
Wow.
Interesting. Councilmember Holland and Councilmember Collins.
Just clarifying on those images that you're saying are already available are sideway images of a property? Oh, I didn't realize that.
Correct. So pictometry actually takes it from 4 different sides of every house. So you have orthos that are actually date stamped using imagery.
Wow. And is that something that maybe we would do for a couple of years and then wouldn't have to do for 10 years? So like we invest for a few years in the software and then every 10 years we do it for a couple years and see if there's changes instead of doing it continuously?
There's 2 things about what you're saying. Yes, your question is yes. We can always buy it and stop. If you want to adhere to the standards of International Association of Assessing Officers, they require you, or they suggest that every property is physically seen every 4 to 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember
I
Collins.
have a follow-up. Was another outcome that maybe Maui experienced was a little bit more of an element of fairness? I think when I hear complaints, because our program is complaint-based, a lot of times people don't notice that there's a violation or they don't notice that there's an extra house till somebody complains about it. So we see one person get charged so much more than their next door neighbor because it isn't noticed. This might help to have a little bit more of continuity on how people are assessed. Did you find that happened?
Thank you for that question. That is exactly what the program is for. It's so that your neighbors don't have to complain on your neighbors. It's the peace of mind knowing that the department is looking in being fair and equitable for all properties, meaning everybody's paying their fair share for the improvements that are built.
Okay, and is it something that can be shared with planning? So planning's looking at the same thing? Because it seems like when there's such a disparity because of how things are just complaint-based, that might be, do we interface with planning at all?
The current process is, I don't know if there is a coordination between departments, but it's not like something that cannot be done. So if that's what the administration would like to do or the council would like to do, it would just need to be documented. How is that process going to be? Are we every single little addition that we need to notify them? I don't know. I mean, that's internal discussions that can be discussed.
And then, what did you find in Maui when some of the rates went up? Did it help in a way where it could balance out? Like if we don't need more money and you get more money, maybe it can be that the rates go down. Did it have any influence like that?
I'm not saying that that's true. I think the biggest part is that everybody's paying for what's improved. I think it's the fairness issue that's more the driving force, is that the public would know that we are being fair and treated equally for all properties.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Just going fast.
Councilmember Carvalho.
I think Councilmember Holland, but just to make sure that the biggest plus would be that imagery would be the total property of AVP versus just the site. I just want to clarify that one more time.
Yeah, I think the current EU911 contract that lies with police is that they have a flyover every 18 months or 2 years. So we have updated imagery every 18 months, 2 years on an ongoing basis. And I know it goes back for quite a while. I think 2008.
Yeah.
But I think the encouragement is that maybe either 911 upgrades their contract to get the best imagery possible, because when you look at aerial imagery, when you get in, it gets granular. So you want the best imagery. Like right now, I think you're getting 3 or 4 inches, which is better than the required 6 inches, because at 6 inches, when you go in, you don't even know what it looks like. It's hard, but it's good for the appraiser, because on DTR, the better imagery you can get, the better you can correct the county records. Because, for example, if you go to a house that's built in the 1960s, it probably has jealousies to it. If the houses in 1960 now have vinyl windows or sliders, you know that they've improved the property. So you ultimately would change the effective age of the house, which ultimately increases the value of the house. So that's the kind of change that DTR would occur in the office.
Yeah, thank you.
I just looked up there's like quite a few companies that provide that software. Thank you for that.
Any other questions from the members? Yeah, I do know, the pictometry imagery right now that we have on the real property tax website, and it's pretty clear. It's pretty nice. If not, we'll move on to collections.
I'm sorry, I had one.
Oh, okay.
On after page 69, the consultant services. You guys mentioned anything about that already? It went up 43,134%. Is there anything new, or was there just higher rates? Or
The expert witness for tax appeal was new.
So that's to expedite the cases at tax appeal court so we can get them off our books.
Okay.
And then the special projects and real property assessment also went up a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, move on to collections. Real property tax collections. Any questions?
Very basic.
Councilmember Collins.
What percentage of people are paying? Like, how much delinquencies do we have? Do most people pay their taxes?
More than double, yeah. Most people do.
Most people do? Is it like 90%? Do we have much of a collections issue?
I would say, honestly, historically, every jurisdiction is pretty similar. The collection rate is probably 99%.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think, there will always be somebody who may be missing a payment, etc. But you have county ordinance in effect that if you're 3 years delinquent, that it goes to the foreclosure process. And once you go to the foreclosure process, people will realize, and at the end of the day before or that day, they'll pay it off in time. And you may have 1 or 2 parcels that go actually to the tax sale where either family can't agree or whatever, but it's a very one-off. I think everybody will be paying their property taxes and not losing their property to foreclosure, to be honest. So,
Yeah, that was going to be my guess, but I didn't see a number. So you're saying 99% of people are basically. So we're not having a lot of delinquencies. I would think if people are delinquent, it's because they can't pay it or somebody died or something, but it's not very much, bottom line.
Any other questions for collections? Not, we'll move on to purchasing. Any questions for purchasing?
I do.
Councilmember Collins.
These are a little bit of general questions just to help understand. So, how is the availability of contractors holding up? Like, our roads contractors, or what? Do we have enough?
Good morning, Ernie Brewer, Purchasing Chief. The market is still somewhat unpredictable. We are the smallest county in the state, which creates challenges on its own. We do get responses to solicitations. Pricing has been a challenge, as you know. But in terms of being able to execute awards and contracts, for the most part, we've been able to do so. One of the biggest areas that are causing challenges for the county would be with aggregate, and I think roads might have addressed that when they were. I'm not sure if they've.
They did mention it, yeah.
Yeah, that's been a challenge, and that's a private sector element. I don't know what much we can do about that, but the private sector has its own set of priority projects that are moving forward, and the government is trying to compete with that same resource. So we've been finding delays in securing aggregate needed to move some of these projects along.
So we had a rather passionate discussion on bathrooms on our CIP budget. So when we look at the high cost of, say, putting a bathroom in at Vendina Stadium on the soccer field, 6 years ago that was $750,000. Can you help us understand, I mean, I'm sure it's more expensive now, what is building that cost so much?
Essentially, we have not yet fully recovered from the implications of the government's shutdown of a very powerful economy, and we're still seeing supply issues, we're seeing labor issues, and generally speaking, it's much more expensive to do business than it ever has been in the past. Inflation was not something that helped. So all of those economical factors are having an impact on driving the cost. Many of our, I was at the Cost Control Commission yesterday, they had similar questions. Many of our bids are coming in well over budget, and the county's been scrambling to find resources needed to meet some of these very, very important projects.
So I don't know if you saw or if anybody is planning to go. I am planning to go. We have the Public Utilities Commission has Young Brothers in front of them on Monday, April 14th at 5 p.m. And so I'm looking at their newspaper announcement in the back of the paper for Garden Island. And it has, the increases are like 35%, 45%. The highest increase is 76.6%, 5% increase on shipping. I'm hoping that somebody from our county, I mean, I'm going to go, but I hope county government or possibly procurements, like somebody's over there, because I think it's, how significant do you think it would be if we had a 30 to 40% increase on shipping, as far as you know, on our projects?
We are an island community, and most of our goods and services, in fact, vast majority of our goods and services are sent in through that very resource. It's through the water. We don't have the benefit of railroads as the contiguous states have. And contractors are not in business to lose money. They are not going to absorb those costs. They are going to pass those costs on, and we will, if those increases occur, we will likely see a corresponding impact upon the amount of money that is being bid on our projects.
So even when they have already bid or we're already under contract, and then it takes, a year or two to start it, and then their shipping rate goes in, is that something that gets added on? I mean, I wouldn't think they would want to take the cost, they wouldn't want to take that loss. I mean, that's a big cost, right?
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of calls on that very issue from our contractors, and my direction to them is it's your responsibility to understand the market forces. You have your consultants, you have your private people that support your business. You need to understand and confer with your material men and your subcontractors to better understand what the market forces are that may impact upon the pricing. Once we issue a competitive sealed bid, which is what 80% of our procurement projects involve, we cannot alter that money once we issue an award. No escalation is permitted. So if they're going to come in, especially in the case of a multi-term contract, they have to be able to conduct an accurate analysis of the cost so that we can incorporate that into the award and into the ultimate contract.
Okay. Well, in case anybody's curious, Monday the 14th, 5:30 p.m., second floor of the State Building. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for purchasing? If not, thank you. We'll move on to the Kaua'i Humane Society contract. And I know they do have a presentation, so we'll let them do their presentation. We'll ask questions on that, and then we should be done with finance.
My name is Patrick Gallagher. I'm the Executive Director of the Humane Society. Dan and Jess introduce themselves. Jess.
Push the button so it turns.
Oh, okay. Okay. Morning. My name is Patrick Gallagher, Executive Director for the Kaua'i Humane Society.
I'm Jess McAvoy. I'm the Director of Finance at the Humane Society. Hi, everyone. I'm Ben Osaro, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Kaua'i Humane Society.
Welcome.
Thank you. We'll go to the next slide. So our funding sources, as you can see, the majority of all of our funding comes from grants and donations. It's almost about $2 million for us. That kind of, as you all understand, that ebbs and flows from year to year. So that's something we can't completely count on, but it's a majority of our sources. Also see up there veterinary services. So those are things like our spay and neuter clinics, our community care clinic, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So those are those services. The other one on there is program revenues. So those are things like our direct release program, so that people that are bringing animals to the state, we help with that. And then you can see just under $2 million is from the county. One little aspect up there, the 2% is our retail. So you all know Bloomingdale's shop and the gift store that we have there at the Humane Society. Bring in about 2% of our revenue. Go to the next slide, please. So just a review of last year. Our intake, we had about just a little over 2,000 animals that came in, dogs and cats. We adopted out 1,640 animals. That is up since over last year, about 400 animals, and about 500 from 2022. So they are going up. So we are getting more animals adopted out. We've had up there, you can see record adoptions for the month of December. That actually carried on for, so our benchmark is about 100 animals a month that we go. That's kind of what we shoot for, and that's what we kind of hope for. That's a good benchmark for us. We actually saw close to that same number for January and February, and we missed it by 4 animals for March. So we're still trending upwards, so that's always good. We had fewer transfers to the mainland, and a big part of that is they're suffering from the same problems we are: overcrowding, budget constraints. The other part of that was unintended consequences is the merger between Hawaii and Alaska, that they actually put on hold transfers of animals. So I believe it was about 150 animals that we I looked back at previous years. And we were 150 animals short for, I believe it was December, that we normally ship out that many animals. So we had to either find homes for those animals or get them transferred out some other way. So, we also spayed and neutered just about 3,000 animals last year. Neonatal kittens that we get in 517 of those. Those are kittens that come in that something happened to their mothers. Anything from a couple of hours old to up to 2 weeks. So these are animals that need a lot of attention. So round the clock feeding every 2 hours. They have to be fed via bottle around the clock with that. So it's a high intense involvement program, and that's where a lot of our fosters come into play because they can help with that around the clock. Otherwise, if they can't, then staff has to take the animals home. So, in October, we had a new vet come on board, which has really helped out quite a bit because now, since we can provide vet service 7 days a week, which before we could not do that. It's been really helpful. It's been about a 4-year task to try to get a vet here. There's vet shortages across the whole United States, and to get them here is even harder. So it's a tough thing. We've helped out slightly over 1,000 owners with different things from either a spay or neuter, vaccinations, deworming, that type of thing, just general pet services, vet services that we do. One other note on there is the $85,000 that volunteers provide for us. So that's their hours and what they provide to us. So that's a fair amount. We're looking to up that number. I want to carry over from my Red Cross era and really push more volunteers. So that other item on there, struggle to find humane officers. Thanks to Ben's hard work in the last 2 weeks, we actually have 2 humane officers that are going to be starting. So really good with that. And then just lastly on there, the total live release rate of 87.9, which is pretty good. I know you've probably all heard the term no-kill shelters. To qualify as a no-kill shelter, you have to be 90%. So we were just below that. So we're still shooting for it for next year. So can we go to the next slide? Our field trip shelter dog program, which is a really successful program. You can see we actually had over 6,000 field trips of dogs, and this is where visitors or residents here come in and they can essentially rent a dog for a day, take it to the beach, go hiking with it. The other nice thing about it is there's a lot of intrinsic value with this. Is it gets the dog out, it allows them to be out of the kennel. It's a behavioral train so that they're used to being around humans, used to being around going hiking and everything. Gets them away from the shelter, which is really beneficial for them to increase adoption. And the other thing too is it's a lot of exposure. This is one of those things that we hear quite a bit about. And in fact, 2 weeks ago we had a social media influencer come out and she rented a dog. She did a field trip for one of these dogs, and it's actually starting to bring in donations from that. So there's a lot of value that's intrinsically attached to our field trip program. So the other nice thing about it too is if a visitor comes to here and they want to adopt a dog, they can rent the dog for the day, they can take it out, and what better souvenir to bring back from Hawaii is than a dog. So, and some of our grants and everything that we're working on is trying to discount that off-island adoption for them, so it makes it beneficial. So, and then people can actually take it out for more than a day. They can actually take it out for a week or so.
Can you go back real quick?
Yeah.
Can we go back one slide real quick?
Sure.
I just want to touch real quick on the helping the pet owners. That's through our community care clinic. That's 100% funded and run by us. So that's grants, a vaccine for $20. We really try and give back to the community with a low cost. So that is 100% on us. One thing you guys will love, between transfers to our partners and off-island adoptions, we're looking at closer to 900 animals transferred off-island. And again, 100% cost on us through grants and donations. And we'll knock on wood, neonates this year has been very, very low. So the spay neuter that we're doing with 3,000 surgeries is definitely kind of affecting what we're taking in, which is huge.
We're just getting into kitten season, so.
That's why we're not calling.
Yeah. But if any of you want to foster, you know, come on out to the shelter. We'll set you up. Then you can go to the next slide. Last time I was in front of you, we actually talked about this, impacts of overcrowding, so I won't go into this too much, but just understand those numbers are actually switched right now. Dogs were about 200% capacity, and cats are a little bit lower. We've been really successful with getting, in the last few months, getting cats adopted or transferred off island. So the numbers have switched a little bit, but like I said, coming into kitten season, those numbers are probably going to go right back up. So, and one of the things that we have is the adverse effects is not just on the animals, but it's also on the staff. We have a lot of turnover with our animal care technicians. That's the tough job because they're the ones in there working with the animals every single day, cleaning up after them, feeding them, observing behavior, stuff like that. So it's one of those things that's really tough. I can say about the field or the humane services officer. We had a difficult time getting someone here, and what we finally had to do was raise the salary for that. The next focus that we're going to be doing is focusing on potentially raising salaries for that. But that won't be until our contract is up next year with the county, so that would be something that we'd be anticipating adding to the next budget. So, go to the next slide. Looking forward, some of the things that we want to focus on is, again, just focusing on animal care and welfare. And then now that we have the Humane Services officers, we can do a lot more investigation and enforcement. And then, again, our licensing through our microchips. And those are supplied to the county through our quarterly reports every 3 months or so. Some of the things that I wanted to also focus on is we are an open admission shelter. That's one of the burdens that we have. So every animal that comes to us, we have to accept, whether it's the feral cats. But then we work with our partners for that. So it is something that is fairly tough because people drop off animals all the time. We were closed yesterday. We had 2 animals come in, even though we were closed. So it's an ongoing thing that's always tough for us. And then I mentioned about our community care clinic. It's a low-cost clinic that we have on Tuesdays and Saturdays. The clinic is really helpful because it does provide low-cost, basic vet care for the public, but it is a double-edged sword because we're providing low cost. It requires not just a veterinarian, but vet techs and animal care technicians. So we have to include all of those salaries. And as you can imagine, we're at the end of a 5-year budget, so our salaries are set as of 5 years ago, not what they should be right now. So our contract is kind of limited in that regard. So you can move on to the next slide. So the impact we also have, and these are one of the things that's always ongoing, is so part of our contract with the county is whenever there is any animals involved in any kind of police action, whether somebody gets arrested and there are animals at their home, we work with KPD to take that animal in. It can go on for months to years that we have that animal. We take care of that animal, health and feeding and any kind of vet care that it might need. They're kept in our boarding area, so it's also something that is twofold. So not only are we spending money on that animal, it's keeping us from earning money on that boarding area. Now, as I said, these cases can sometimes go on for years. Depending on what the outcome is of that case, we might not get reimbursed for that. And I believe it's like can be up to $12,000 a year that we're losing on those animals. And a lot of times, depending on a judge's ruling, well, we may never see that money. So is there anything that I'm missing with that?
Well, so with the past 2 years, if you're looking at the, 3,000 cases that we've had.
3,000?
3,000 actual days of animals in custody.
Okay.
So when we take them in, we have to have vet take a look at them, make sure they don't have anything immediately wrong with them. That's ongoing care. That's feeding, housing. Right now, because we are over capacity, we're using our boarding facility, so we aren't able to generate revenue at roughly $65 a day on lost revenue on there. The big thing is we have 3 dogs that are over there over 2 years, and then we have another dog who's over a year, pending court cases. None of that was built into our contract, so we've spent roughly about $200,000 on these dogs, just through care and medicines. A lot of them have anxiety, so you've got to feed them pills every day just so they just don't go stir crazy. Plus, we have to take them out into the yard, do all that types of stuff on there. So it's definitely quite an impact. And then with the new act coming in, there's the possibility that we're going to see more hold times. We're going to go from misdemeanor to a felony. So
yeah, the Act 224 is the Dangerous Dogs Act that is supposed to go in effect in June or July, I believe. So that's another thing that we're going to have to deal with on top of everything else.
This year.
Yeah. Yeah, it passed last year, but because each state does something a little different with their animal welfare, they gave a year for everybody to kind of get everything situated. So you can go to the next slide. Current areas of focus, as I mentioned, retaining our humane officers and, again, our animal care technicians. And with that, that's reducing job stress and because of some of the overcrowding. So if we can get more people working with the animals, it's less time that people have to spend dealing with a lot of the work. So it kind of spreads the wealth out, so to speak. I mentioned about the community care clinic. It's been really successful. As I said, we opened it up in October or late October, and it filled up right away. So we are seeing a lot of that. Keeps happening. I want to mention also about our transfer program. We really are trying to push away from transferring because it is a losing proposition for us because we ship them in a crate. It's got to be a special type of crate. We make sure that we have all the medicine and all the food for that animal. It gets transferred. We pay for the flight and everything, and we get none of that money back because 9 times out of 10, where we're transferring it to, we don't see any funds back from them. We may get the crate back, but that's not a definite. I have seen since I've been there 9 or 10 crates returned. So it's real. Yeah, it is a losing proposition. That's why we're really, really pushing towards the off-island adoptions because that way whoever's adopting that animal is paying for everything. And we supplement that to make that more appealing to people coming in. So we supplement that with grants that we get. So we push out the message of, hey, let's help an animal get to the mainland in a better home. So that really does help. And then one of the last things on there I want to mention is we're having a collaboration with San Diego Humane Society, which is a really big Humane Society in the mainland is really at the forefront of a lot of new things. And because some of the people that are on our board of directors are also associated with that, we kind of have a free in. So we go out there, we learn about what they do, and take back best practices that we can implement in our area. So I can go to the next slide. I think we mentioned just about everything here. I know the last thing I just wanted to mention was the true up. So when we have all of our salaries paid out, if there is money that we are not using, that money gets paid back to the county through a reimbursement. So, and then you can go to the next slide. And I will let Jess explain a lot of this.
Yeah, it's the fun stuff. So when we're talking about the true up, it is a unique, I guess, mechanism where we'll ask for 1.2 million if we can't fill our ACO positions or our vet techs or our animal care techs. All of that just goes into a reimbursement to the county. So we do ask for 1.2. Usually we give you guys back anywhere between 65 to 80,000, depending on positions being filled. Usually not hard to spend money on the electricity, internet, all that stuff is pretty standard on there. This year we are asking for a little bit more than the typical 1 or 1.1 that we asked for, but we'll still be well under the 5.5 for the full contract over the 5 years. Next one, that one. So this is a little breakdown in here between labor costs. So you have your animal care, your welfare. Part of that is your vet techs, your a little bit of the vet, and then on the other side we have the investigation, which is our ACOs. When we were talking about our animal control officers, we had a lot of trouble at $21, at $26. We finally went to $34 per hour. Benefit also for you guys is we have a 36-hour work week. So it helps to retain our employees. It gives them that mental health break and also kind of saves. So that $34 is really probably closer to a $30 per hour over a 40-hour work week. You have our non-labor costs. So the main part of that is just going to be like electricity, propane, and some medical costs for when the animals first come in as per the contract. And then just some general G&A for admin, paper, and all your other basics on there. Licensing revenue, so licensing has changed where there's not an actual licensing, it's all microchip. So that just kind of gets netted out between what we actually collect for implementing the microchips at $20 a piece versus what we thought we were going to get with licensing. So some of that goes back into the net back to you guys. So that gives us the 1.197 that we're asking for fiscal year 26.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Any questions from the members? Councilor Sheriff Bozo.
Thank you for the presentation. I want to be more clear on Act 224 and our process for receiving animals from KPD. These are dogs that are seized, that the officers are seizing the animal themselves, right?
Correct, yeah. So most commonly it's going to be for like a dangerous dog situation.
Right.
So KPD also has the enforcement authority to decide if they want to issue citations. And at that point, if they do issue citations, we become the assisting party. So if they dictate the seizure, we'll go ahead and do that. But our normal policies at that point in time no longer fall into play. Normally, if we receive an animal through a seizure, we'll hold it for at least 2 weeks. The owner is given the opportunity to pay 40 fees at that time. If they become, if they fall more than 2 weeks behind on that payment, then the animal is actually considered forfeited to the Quiet Main site. But when the animal is seized on behalf of KPD, that we can't do that.
Right. So I just want to make sure that if someone gets arrested and they're at the beach and they have a dog, but the crime doesn't involve the dog, do you take the dog?
Yeah, or request a.
But that's not that. Those dogs aren't in the 3,000 days that you mentioned earlier, right? We're only talking about those that the officers say, "Hey, we got to seize the dog for evidence or for investigation." And you're saying that how many of those happen a year?
How many incidents?
Yeah.
For dangerous dog, I don't have the exact number. I would say less than 10.
But collectively, with all that have been seized in the past, right now you're saying, like for right now, how many of those that you have in custody right now? 4.
And that number, I mean, we can't really predict what that might be because the implementation is only going to be happening with the law in June. So it may go up, it may not.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get an idea because I just don't think it's right that that we don't pay for those dogs that are seized. I don't think that's fair. If we're telling you, hey, hold this dog for investigative purposes or for whatever, because that's not in a is that in a contract? Is that in our existing contract?
It is, yeah.
In the contract, I think we have it as we seize the dog in 48 hours. The initial seize or something like that.
If it's a seizure, it's a 9 or sorry, so it depends on what the seizure's for. So if it's a seizure for like a citation for a dangerous dog, for example, it's a 14-day window. So they're allowed to make, if we decide that sorry, let me backtrack a little bit. So the seizure would be like if we do a dangerous dog, we decide that containment is going to be an issue, we can't, return this animal to the owner, then the boarding would be forced at that point, that would constitute the seizure, and they would have to pay at least 2 weeks in advance. They fall beyond that.
And the contract only stipulates that the initial bringing of the dog, looking at like medical costs, and then like feeding them for up to like 30 days in the actual contract. But other than that, we would have to go back and try and collect from the actual individual.
Okay,
through the court system.
I'm a little confused. Okay, so these dogs that are being seized are being seized, but they're not being held as evidence for KP. In other words, you're not required to hold them until it gets, because the way I read it is you got to hold it until the court decides what to do with the animal.
Yeah.
But you're talking about after 2 weeks we're billing the owner. Is that how it's worked?
That's our only recourse.
Yeah.
Is to go after the owner.
Yeah.
But you can't release the dog.
Correct.
Okay.
I have a follow-up on that, because I guess I'm confused. So all the dogs in this 3,000 days that you have dealt with, it's the dog that gets arrested, not the owner, right? Like the dog is seized. Like if the owner gets seized and the dog is innocent, what happens to the dog? Do you guys end up having to hold on to the dog while somebody's in jail?
Yeah, so if we do a seizure, say, KPD makes an arrest, and...
On the adult?
Yeah, and there's a dog in possession, there's nobody else to care for that animal, we'll take that animal and we hold it for 9 to 10 days. So that's not the 2-week window for dangerous dog, for example.
So the person gets arrested, you hold the dog for 9 or 10 days, the person goes to jail for 2 years, you don't hold the dog for 2 years?
No.
Okay. I think somebody would have to pick the dog up, right? We can't, yeah.
Yeah, we try to identify next of kin if there's somebody that needs to take the dog
And so in those 3,000 days, is it just a few dogs that were seized for their own bad behavior that you ended up having to hold on to for a couple of years?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number.
Yeah, it was primarily it was the 3 dogs that we had for over 2 years. That's the biggest.
And they are dangerous. And do they seem dangerous when they're in there? I mean, like you'd think they're just still. Okay.
I mean, they're okay in our custody, but I think they were seized for dangerous acts on livestock. So they're not around that all the time in our care, so I can't say for sure whether they're dangerous or not.
Yeah, and their behavior will change in the shelter too.
Yeah, all right. I have 2 different questions.
Go ahead.
One is very simple. A humane services officer is the person in the truck.
Yeah.
Okay. And then our feral cat partners are?
Kaua'i Community Cat Project. They're the ones that have the area behind us. They're our primary. I don't believe
So they're physically on your property?
Yeah, they're renting area from us.
So somebody comes in, they got feral cats, and they drop it off at your place. You call Kaua'i Community Cat Project, and they come around, they pick the cat up, and they put it in there.
If they have space available, yeah.
And if they don't?
That's another discussion you would have at the shelter about what to do.
But it's not your problem.
No,
So
it would.
it would be.
If somebody left the cat, yeah, it would be our problem. If the cat comes in, and there's a whole series of things that we ask the person to bring it in. Can you take it out of the kennel or whatever you brought it in? If they can't, and it's deemed feral with that, we tell them we can't take that animal.
Okay.
So, and we would then at that point have a discussion with CCP, or one of the other ones. I don't know that Kaua'i ASPCA takes that many ferals at all, but that's another possibility.
Okay, and another very simple question. Do the low-cost walk-in patients typically get chipped? Are we successfully chipping a lot of animals? When somebody comes in and wants the cat fixed, do they leave with a chip?
Yes, yeah.
And if they come in and they're sick, they leave with a chip?
If they get spayed neutered, we do chip them. If it's something that comes in and it's sick and we treat it for that, we ask, but we're not required
Okay,
to chip
and
it.
do you see are most animals coming in chipped at this point?
That's a good question. I don't really know. I can find out. I don't really know.
I think for the people, the population, the new chipping situation is cheaper because they don't have to pay and re-register the animal regularly or when they lose their collar. So I think it seems like it's working out. I know all my animals are chipped.
Yeah, and it's also part of our ad campaign is spay, neuter, microchip your animal. Those are the key things.
I have a question. Barking dogs. Have you guys had much barking dogs complaints, and then has it followed the whole process? How's that process working?
I'll let Ben answer that, but it is something that we always hear. I get calls, I get emails about that. What it really is because there isn't technically a barking dog ordinance, that we ask that whoever is reporting and the party that has the animal that's barking, we ask that they try to mediate. If that can't, then we kind of step in and try to help out. But so I don't know, Ben, what your experience is with what calls you get, because he gets calls, I get calls.
Yeah, so we get a fair amount of them. They're probably my least favorite to enforce. Yeah, just the way it's kind of written in the contract as far as how we go about enforcing it is the initial call will come in. We'll have an officer go out to verify that the barking isn't caused because of some kind of welfare concern, or the animal's injured or something like that. Once we verify that the barking is not because of any of those reasons, we would ask the complainant to, log the barking and then to make sure, and then they submit that to us as evidence. Once we verify that, I'm going back. So when we do the initial welfare check, we also make sure that the owner is aware of the noise complaint, and we give them educational material on how to maybe subsidize the barking at that time. But ultimately, what happens is if the barking continues, there's only so much that we can do. We can suggest mediation to KEO, but there's no actual citation to be issued at the end of it. And then we kind of just sort of go out the door. Normally, the visit and the welfare check is kind of enough to have make the correction at that time. But we see our fair amount of it for sure.
And are people happy at the end, or do you still get the same complaints from the same person? Or
I would say most of the time, it's probably like 70-30. So most of the time we get a pretty good resolution out of it, and then we have the 30% where it's kind of
never come to a resolution. Okay, no, that's interesting. Councilmember Holland?
Just a follow-up on that. Do you feel like you're getting a wide swath of calls from different people, or is it the same people dealing with it over and over?
I'd probably say the same thing, around like 70-30. So I think you get
70 same new people?
No, new people. Yeah.
And 30% is just people that just over and over deal with this. And then just also on that leash law.
Leash law is one of our biggest ones, for sure.
You get a lot of calls on that?
Yeah. Our primary for ACOs, and the number one thing that's going to keep us busy is just straight up pickups. And then secondly is going to be our leash law violations, for sure.
And then on the leash law violations, what is the standard by which you kind of react to a situation like that?
Sorry?
What is is there a certain point where somebody calls you and it says, oh, there's a dog that somebody has on the beach without a leash.
Yeah.
You're not jumping in your car and driving down there, right?
It depends on officer availability. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we handle cars basically because we've had struggle with short staffing for so long. If the officer availability is there, we'll definitely take a swing through. The beaches are a lot harder for us to unfortunately enforce. But we'll have an officer go out there, and if there is a violation being observed, we will have a conversation on that. If it's a first-time offense, we can just do some simple education, and we'll try and get, we might think that a warning might suffice in that time, but if it's a repeat offense, then we'll citations to go from there.
Do you feel like it's an excess of calls where it's not really, there's some cases where it's an issue, and a lot of the cases are just somebody complaining about a totally harmless dog that's for whatever reason wasn't on a leash, or?
Yeah, but that's also, I guess, depending on the area. So like in a neighborhood, the complaints are probably gonna be a little bit more valid than somebody letting their dog run in the beach, you know?
Yeah, interesting. Okay, I was just wondering about that. Thank you.
And one of the other things too is we'll get a call about something like that, and you know it'll be different moving forward, but it can sometimes take a while for an officer to get out there, and they may already be gone.
Right, and I'm just kind of wondering too, because I know historically the law at some point was like, if your dog is like likely to go astray, or it had like really specifics that I believe were modified and taken out, and I was just wondering of the feasibility of maybe putting some of those restrictions back in, so you're not getting as many calls on totally innocent puppies that are like, or whatever, rather than situations where the dog's either likely to go astray or create some sort of problem or be dangerous or whatever. I just think sometimes people get a little obsessive about that law in cases where it's really not an issue.
Yeah, it's a little vague.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay,
That
thank
would be
you.
a whole lot more education too.
A whole lot more education
Yeah, to the public
about
what you can, what considered a leash law violation and what's not.
right.
That's what I was hoping you would say now, because I think very responsible dog owners with very well behaved dogs will go to the beach, and often they pick places where nobody is, right? And you can't actually take the dog in the water, out of the water on the leash, right? So, but does the law say that's what you're supposed to do?
I'm not familiar enough with it.
That was it's a little bit of a gray area. I don't want to misspeak, but I know there's something about the actual shoreline being like property boundary. It's weird. So if the animal's on the beach itself, we can enforce, but if it's like on the water line, then there's not much we can do about it.
Oh, like that.
So it's kind of weird the way it's written. I don't want to speak on that, but
Councilmember Bulusan?
Sorry, it's going to be a very dumb question. With this follow-up, if the leash is on the dog and the dog is running free, is that breaking the leash law?
Yeah, that's a question we actually get all the time. That's a go-to defensive.
The leash is going to the
So the stipulations
Just slipped away from me.
So you can't just have the leash loose on the animal. You have to be in control of the leash.
Councilmember Kaua'i?
I have a real simple one. You use the acronym ACO a number of times. I think of that as the jail adult correction officer. What does ACO mean for you?
Animal control officer.
Animal control officer. So that's the person who goes out in the truck.
Yeah.
So that's called it humane.
Yeah, that's the other. Yeah.
Interchangeable.
All right.
That's more for like the hiring. We just try and change it. The universal term is animal control officer.
Are you happy with your new truck?
It's still in the works.
Oh, you don't have it yet?
No, it's been bought and everything. It's just they're fabricating it. It's gonna come through the process, unfortunately.
So you don't have it yet?
No.
Not really.
It's got to come from the mainland too.
Yeah, it's a whole process.
So it hasn't got on the boat yet?
Not sure.
Wow.
They're changing our ETA, right? So we've been from 3 months now to what, 6, right?
It's closer to that, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They keep changing it on us.
And Jesse, are you at ACO also? No.
No, I'm the finance guy.
You're the finance guy.
He's a CPA.
All right, and then how many ACOs do we have?
Currently, we have 3 full-time and then 1 part-time dispatcher.
Okay.
The 2 are very, very fresh.
Are you
Well,
very,
we have
very
one
busy?
who has 15 years of experience on the mainland. So
Okay.
it's a really good find.
That's Jacob.
It's actually our newest officer, Nico, who started 2 weeks ago.
Okay, all right, well, thank you to your whole team.
Okay, any other questions? If not, we are coming up on a caption break, and we'll let these guys go. We'll let finance be done, and then after the caption break, we'll take Office of Economic Development. Any final questions? If not, thank you guys. We'll take a 10-minute caption break, and we'll be back with Office of Economic Development.
Like landing is here. I got it. Oh, I got it.
Okay, welcome back. Next up is Office of Economic Development. Nalani, you want to give us a synopsis?
Good morning. Nalani Bruin, Director of the Office of Economic Development. Thank you for having all of us. Let's see. So basically, the brief description is just that our budget is similar. It's about an 11% increase this year, and that's because of very specific directed projects that we want to go after to continue the work that we've been doing. Let's see, we have the two big ones that we have basically are we're going after the next steps for the Coconut Marketplace Mobility Hub project because we really see that as an opportunity for tourism for the next generation. And then we also have some matching funds in there for our energy project, which is basically putting in the EV chargers. We'll be back before you next week with the ordinance for charging for the EVs. And then regarding positions, there's some change in our budget. You'll see we did move the Film Commission grant coordinator position from the mayor's office to our office, so you'll see that difference. And then we have one open position, and that is the business specialist position. We are actually doing interviews now. We've done 2, and we have 2 more next week, so we expect to hire very soon because we have some really great candidates. I think that's it.
Okay, any questions on the write-up? Councilmember Kaua'i?
I just a simple one. Thank you. Bi-weekly check runs. It says many nonprofit partners operate with limited cash flow, making it difficult for them to sustain operations while awaiting grant reimbursement. Our inability to issue weekly checks remains a challenge. So you give these guys checks every week?
No, so what that's referring to is right now we're doing bi-weekly check runs. Prior to that, it was weekly. That's from finance. That's just how finance is operating right now. For us, we don't have like regular payments we make. It's always kind of on when people provide us with deliverables.
Okay.
So lots of times that it doesn't coordinate well with a 2-week check run. If we get it in too late, then now they have to wait a month for a check.
Oh, I
It's
see.
that kind of thing.
Okay. All right. So you're just saying that that's a problem. You're just letting us know that you can't get the checks
It's
out.
hard to find problems. We found that one.
All right.
Any other questions? Councilmember Holland?
You probably know what I'm going to ask. You're going to guess.
Coconut rhinoceros.
How'd you guess? You're so good. Amazing. I'm just wondering, because I'm really looking around at where that cost is going to come in for us, and obviously parks is a part of it. We discussed it during the parks, and obviously, I think there's a huge lift for solid waste and the fact of how do we deal with our own green waste, and those are clearly within the county of Kuleana. But really this is a state issue, right? And the Department of Agriculture is supposed to be helping with this issue. And, but I also see that the urgency around agriculture and the urgency around both little fire ant and coconut rhinoceros beetle and the threat that they face to our agriculture industry, that there's likely also a place for additional funding for you guys in that capacity. But I also don't want to advocate for it if you can't really take it on, or if it's kind of would be better housed somewhere else. You don't even really have to answer it here necessarily, but if there are specific places or grants or capacity that you have within the department where you would like me to advocate for additional funding for you guys instead of just parks and public works, if you feel that would be effective in some way. I mean, particularly I think about the educational aspect to the community that you guys could really provide, and I appreciate you and your team for already working on some of that background education, and I would love to see that go out to every house on Kaua'i. Maybe one side little fire ant, one side coconut rhinoceros beetle, so people are knowing what to look for, how to test, and just get that educational aspect. I see that as kind of like the role that might be best played. If you have anything you want to say on that, or
just thank you. We need people advocating for that. It's a huge problem. Nikki's been on it 24/7 trying to figure out how the county can help. And yes, we have funds. Thank you to the Department of Agriculture for giving us some funds to start to tackle it. That's in part of our other funding that we bring in, and it will incorporate a huge communications plan, because you're right, that's really what it is. The one thing OED does really well is work with our partners. They're out there, we can enact, we have wonderful community members. We will be doing that. As far as the other departments, I'm hoping that everyone is making the best effort. We're not scientists, so I'm not sure exactly what to tell them, but I think that there are efforts being made to get them to engage.
Do you anticipate funding from the DOA again on this issue this year? I mean, I know that we have a couple of bills that are actually still alive.
We already have 200,000 coming in from DOA specifically for CRB.
Over this next, coming year?
Yeah, the contracts are being done now.
Wonderful,
yeah.
Thank you.
I'll just say I support that.
Council Vice Chair Cooley.
On the economic development specialist 4 position, you said mayor's office back, and then you said this change reflects the operational reality that this role focused on creative industries, film, and grants management. So, I mean, in the past there was a bigger focus on film, but now film is just a part of all of these other areas. And then my interest is, what I'm wondering is, as far as the grants management, are we going after pots of money, say, from the federal government, and then re-granting that money? I mean, or is our grant program primarily with general funds?
Yeah, our that position is really working on facilitating the process of us getting funds. So keeping track
regardless of where the money comes from.
Yeah, making it simpler for when we give it out. We don't do a lot of granting from federal or state funds because they make it really hard to do that. So we have to really figure out how to get that done and get their permissions to do it. So mostly it's county general funds that we do granting on.
So it's not like grant writing, it's just grant management.
We actually have really talented people in the department that do help with grant writing. We have federal grants coming in. The budget that we have of money coming in is almost equal to what we're asking for here because they're very good at it. Mm-hmm. But it comes with a lot of accounting work, and we don't really have. We have a fabulous accountant back here, but it's a lot of work. It takes up all of your time. So right now we're not actively writing unless we have a project we're specifically chasing, and we see money that's going to work to make that happen. Okay. We don't have like a grant writing team just out there looking for grants, but we do provide that information to the community every week to let them know it's out there.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Calden?
I have a follow-up. For our film commissioner position, how is the film industry's interest in Kaua'i doing? Is it on a downward trend, or is it, because it seems like there's AI backgrounds and all kinds of things where there's not as much of a need for on-site locations. Is that still being vigorous, the demand?
I can answer that if you need more than she's here today. But basically, film in general is tanking. I mean, for the whole state, also for Kaua'i. Kaua'i is kind of hung on by having catalog work, photography work, that kinds of things, commercials, the smaller things. And a lot of that has to do here on Kaua'i with the fact that we just do not have affordable hotels. And when they come in, they can't get blocks, or they can't, it doesn't fit in their budget. Okay. So whatever we can get, she's chasing, but it's been difficult. And now with the tax credit issues going on at the ledge, it's even more concerning that it'll continue.
The tax credit.
So there's a tax credit that they provide to qualify productions that come in, right? But it's been attacked several times at the ledge. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So it's good that that person's got more than just the film.
Oh yes, we can keep anybody busy in our office.
Yeah.
Council Chair Opposal.
Yeah, Civil Beat had an article today on these. We spoke about it on the break. But anyway, I don't think we need to go through this sheet, but I appreciate the sheet. But my question is it possible for us, because these are grants that have already been granted or awarded, but some of them are quite large and the text isn't, I think I understand, but some of them I don't. Is it possible to get I would assume that these nonprofits or these organizations got to report back
Yes.
on how they spent the money.
Yes.
Is that something that we could get when these grants are complete?
Oh, yeah. We could provide, well, progress reports are required to be quarterly.
Yeah.
And then the final report, of course, is much more extensive. But we can provide it regularly to council, or just do it whatever we have right now.
I mean, a lot of them are, like I say, are self-explanatory. It's very clear, but some of them are not. So I'll just send a list of what of what I'm interested in, and the other members can do the same, and just so we get a little better understanding of.
Absolutely. Easy.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. And I was going to say, maybe let's just request the ones we're interested in.
Yeah.
I'd hate for them to be sending over reports that we're not going to look at anyways.
And going over these things today, I mean, to me, it's pretty pointless. They've already been granted, but yeah, I don't want to waste any time.
Council Vice Chair Cooley.
So, talking about this line item, grant and aid, and 1.9 million last year, 2.3 on this new budget. So it's broken down by these categories. So I'm curious as to how you determine how much of the total funding goes to each of these categories. Like, how do you prioritize which area gets, like one has ag has 775,000. Sustainability has 55. I mean, it's very broad how much is going to that area that you're making available, right, to grant applications. So, if you're submitting an ag application for 50,000 or 100,000, whatever, then you can give more of those to people in the ag category. But you can only give so much in other areas. So how are you prioritizing that?
For agriculture, that's been a call out for us of where we think we can actually make some headway. Not long ago, we got a big increase of $1 million to put towards basically farm expansion. That's kind of where we've been looking. And it can be anything from value added to just try to create more food opportunities here, to try to create sustainability. So that being one area, we also have a lot of call-outs in our comprehensive economic development strategy and our agriculture development plan. So because we have so many call-outs that the community has said could be done, that's kind of where we focus our money. Innovation, just because economic development is that area, trying to get people to think beyond just doing the same thing over and over. Fix a piece. And if they can tell us how they're fixing it, and it's related to economic development, then we'll put money there. And generally, we're watching all the time how many applications we're getting, and then trying to determine how much money we need the next year.
Where the need is.
Yeah, where the need.
And then to a certain degree, some of the categories kind of overlap too.
Yes.
You could fit either or both. Yeah.
Yeah, just depending on the type, and then when it comes in, each RFP has a different metrics that the people get to see, and then they kind of try to figure out where they fit.
So then within your department, you have a group of people that kind of like as a committee work on this?
Yes, for each RFP, well, we have our grants guru that basically puts the shell together, and then each RFP that we have, we assign people according to what their expertise is in the area, and then they they help build out the metrics and make sure that we're looking at the right things for that type of grant. And then we have a scoring committee from.
They evaluate the applications as well.
Yes.
And you also include others, or is it primarily?
Sometimes we
you have plenty enough.
Yeah, we have plenty now, so that are very good at it. Sometimes we'll include it if it's something very specific that we're doing. We don't do that very often, but or if we don't have someone. Right now, if we were to do business grants, we'd probably go out and get someone because we don't have our business specialist right now. Even though the rest of us have, some business experience. So we just try to get the best people that represent the community to do the best scoring.
Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Carvalho, just want a quick overview again of the synopsis part with the mobility hub. I just wanted to overview on that one because I remember going over all of that, right? And so are we need additional support or how's that?
Yes, so next year we're going into the next phase. So we've come up with the plan. We kind of know where we're going to go with it, how we want to build this whole system out, where visitors could actually come here and just not have a car unless they need it on that day. So what does that look like? So we're in the first steps of that. And what we're realizing is that we have the perfect partner to help us get there, because in Honolulu Initiative, they already figured out half of the problems that are going to come with the mobility hub. So we are enlisting them to help us get into the next area. And what we really want to do is we want to do the pass from government. So we lead in the front in the first phase, because there's a lot of technical things that relate to government that had to get done first. So we're better at that. Now we want to pass it off to the community, which someone like Honolulu Initiative, so they can begin to engage the community, engage the businesses that are around there, and utilize their expertise in mobile options to make the next phase happen, which is really important, because it would be our first test of actually having a shuttle running from the airport to a location, and then having people be able to choose their options for mobility at that location. And hopefully, eventually, the goal is connect every part of the island up.
Okay. Councilmember Kaua'i?
I didn't have a question.
Oh, sorry.
No problem.
I thought you had one before, around the same time. Any other questions on the synopsis? If not, we'll move into the budget.
We're jumping already.
You needed?
No, I was just saying we were kind of jumping in the budget
Oh,
already.
yeah, we were.
Okay, good.
Councilmember Holland.
So just again on the invasive species, the agricultural designation of 775,000, is how much of that is dedicated, or is some of that dedicated to agricultural stuff around invasives?
Yes. We have 100,000 put towards rose-ring parakeet, CRB, anything that we need it for. We've been lucky enough to get some money from the state, so we may not have to use as much for parakeets.
Awesome.
Any other questions? I know, yeah, I asked them to provide the list of projects just so that we can see what was funded last year. Obviously, coming up, all the projects are all competitive. We just put in a bulk amount for them, so.
The other thing, like the answer you just gave to Councilmember Holland, it would be good if these categories break down.
Okay.
If you could share that too. Because it's your intention, right?
Right.
For the new year, we're planning to spend 100,000 on the invasive species. But it's just there in agriculture, and, you know, I mean, if you have a breakdown, which you do.
We actually have a breakdown.
Just provide that. And then my only other question was the one under special projects, and I know the chair is going to have us in a council meeting have a more detailed report back, because we haven't really heard about the details of this in quite a while. And this is the Kekaha CAC facilitator, so that's for the landfill, right? And the host community benefit that goes back to the community. So in a sense, it's like a grant program in itself.
Yes.
And so it's in your department, but it's not really run by your department, right? I mean,
we run the grant program. So as the funds were allocated, they spent several years trying to figure out how to allocate the funds to the community. And they couldn't come up with anything, so it ended up in OED because we had a grant process. So we've used that and worked with the committee to come up with the different projects. We hire a facilitator. She's from the community, so she's able to kind of work in and among them to write grants, because that's kind of the most difficult piece. They have to write down what they want. And then it goes before the host community benefits committee, and they vote on it. They review and vote on it. And that's pretty much how they fund their projects.
so this is just the position, the facilitator.
Yeah, that's just the position.
And then the amount of money is available each year for grants is over in solid waste or wherever.
Yeah, they were expecting in 2026 another 346,000, almost 347,000.
The new monies.
New monies coming in.
For 2026.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And we'll look forward to the meeting coming up soon.
Yeah, this sheet has some of the projects they funded. On the second page, Kekaha CAC grants, 106,000.
Oh, like the 3 or 4 of them right there, yeah. Okay.
Any other questions for Office of Economic Development? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to planning, which is our final department for today.
Morning, Chair, members of Council. Kaua'i Hall on behalf of the Planning Department. This year, aside from the small increases associated with salary, wages, and benefits, we're asking for a 15% increase in operations, roughly $49,000. But of that $49,000, the biggest bulk of that is a $35,000 request for the Sea Grant program. The Sea Grant program has been with the County of Kaua'i since 2009. And when it was originally established, it was established under a 90% fund allocation for the Sea Grant program. And we kept it flatlined throughout the years. And so Sea Grant came back this year and asked if we could consider putting it back up to 90% with some of the funding issues that they're having. And so we discussed at the Mayor's office, we're definitely open to it, given the resources and services that Sea Grant provides for us. So that's really the biggest ask here. As far as overall operations, the front counter permit processing, this past year, the average wait time for sign off on building permits was 1 to 2 weeks. This month, I can't say, in checking with the manager there, it is actually at a 3 to 4 week wait right now, as a combination to do an increase of flux in permit applications this month, and as well as some absences we have with the front counter staff. But it's expected to return back to the 1 to 2 weeks wait within the next 4 to 5 weeks. For our higher level regulatory permit processes, we're averaging 1 planning commission meeting a month, on occasion 2, but still at 1 a month. And then from our long range team, their priority this year is, of course, the kind of adaptation plan, which is putting the final workshops into play with the communities, and then, of course, the East Kaua'i Community Plan, which we will begin those workshops this summer, anticipated to have a draft by the fall. Of course, that necessitates going back out into the community and re-engaging the community with a draft once a draft is provided. But anticipations are having a East Kaua'i Community Plan up before the body for its review by spring of 2026. And then lastly, our enforcement division. Of course, the enforcement division is a complaint-based operation, with the one exception, and that's the vacation rentals. We still do have at least one staff constantly monitoring the World Wide Web and working with the MOUs with Airbnb and VRBO to actively and proactively shut down any appearances of illegal vacation rentals. We also run a scorched earth program, or so we refer to it as, where we bring in all staff and allow all staff to participate in just a worldwide search of the World Wide Web. Because it's just, with the MOUs we have with Airbnb and VRBO, it really is able to flush any illegal operations off of those major websites, and that constitutes about 70% of the market. But there's a 30% of the market that we don't have MOUs with, and so we use these scorched earth programs to really just hit any algorithm to find any deep, dark crook that the illegal vacation rentals may be trying to hide in. And this year, quite honestly, we just finished this month's scorched earth program. We actually found more than we usually did. Usually in the scorched earth program, we'll find 2 or 3, and that's after a whole month of searching hardcore across the World Wide Web. We're getting the final tally right now, and there's about 14 or 15 that we're actually able to capture in the scorched earth program, which is a bit higher than we're used to. I'm not sure where that number is coming from, but we were able to capture those. And then for the report, as far as the overall fine account this year, in 2022, we go back to 2021, there were $88,000 collected in fines to the enforcement program. 2022, $45,000. 2023, $93,000, and this past fiscal year we extracted $45,000 in enforcement fines. That concludes concludes our report in a nutshell. Of course, here for any questions.
Council Vice Chair Cooley.
You know, in your narrative, and you might have said something just now, I'm just not clear. The dollar funding of 4 coastal zone management grant funding position. So it then says NOAA there. Is that also Sea Grant?
No,
No, Sea Grant is something to the state, and NOAA is federal dollars.
Yeah.
So I think I identified only 3 of the 4 positions you're talking about. In the position list on master page 87, are you talking about the 4 positions that you're dollar funding because of questions about NOAA's future and funding the planner 1?
Yeah, so there's 2 planner positions, an enforcement position, and a clerical position that are NOAA funded, or essentially funded through federal dollars.
Okay, so 2 of the planner ones.
Yeah.
The CZM enforcement officer.
Correct.
And then what was the 4th one? The account clerk.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I was thinking, what is the Safe Routes to School program?
That's also a federally funded position.
But different fund source.
Different fund source.
Yeah, because it said grant also. Okay, let's chat on those 4 positions from the narrative. I'm just curious about the timeline on the updating of the 1974 Wailua Kapa Development Plan. So the East Kauai Community Circulation Plan is underway, but it does say that you will also produce detailed town plans for Wailua, Kapa'a, Kapahi, and Anahola. What is the plans for that, or the schedule, sort of like?
That's what I'm speaking to, the East Kauai Community Plan. We're looking at going into the workshops this summer.
By communities?
By communities,
and so,
well,
not all at once though, right?
Yeah, we're still strategizing on where exactly each of the workshops are going to be held. But definitely have representation on parts of East Kauai, and recognizing Anahola is a bit further than Kapa'a, having representation in Anahola as well. We haven't finalized the exact dates or the specific locations.
But this whole process will take a few years?
Yeah, we anticipate the workshops being held over the summer. And you do the workshop. We did the first open house. Everybody comes in and kind of just puts all their issues and concerns up. So Marie and her team are sieving through, well over 1,000 comments of what are the issues and putting it into specific workshops that we can go back into the community and have. So those workshops centered around specific areas like transportation, of course. East Kauai is going to be a huge one. Housing, economic redevelopment. They're putting those into tracks, and so we go into the communities and have those workshops around those specific tracks. And then once we're done this summer with those workshops with the community, then the team gets together and starts drafting that first draft of the East Kauai Community Plan, assessing everything from traffic to housing and whatnot. And then once we get that first draft up, then we go back in and hold those workshops saying, we have a draft now, so please tell us what you like. Yeah, we want to hear what you like, but really, what don't you like? What did we possibly get wrong here? And going through another round of community workshops. But ultimately, we want to have a draft then at the Planning Commission sometime in spring of 2026. And then the Planning Commission goes through that public interface, testimony, participation, possible amendments and recommendations. And then after the Planning Commission is done, then it comes to this body for, again, another round of public hearings. So we're anticipating and scheduling that up to be before you folks spring of 2026.
So the thing about producing detailed town plans for these 4 separate areas is less about specific plans for those areas, but more about getting input from those areas for the bigger plan.
For the bigger plan, and then as we've done other community plans like South Kauai and West Kauai, those community engagement workshops somewhat turn into, we would like specific regulations in our town. So say like Hanapepe has, they're very similar, but some different tweaks of regulations than Waimea Town. And actually that is not a byproduct, but it's related to what happened in East Kauai to begin with. The first long-range plan that had kind of town-specific regulations is East Kaua'i. And there are specific requirements for the town core of Wailua versus Kaua'i. And so this process could, if it's determined, could adjust those regulations and specific town plans.
The thing that just sort of stands out to me is that of these four towns, if you will, Anahola is different in the sense that it's majority State Department of Hawaiian Homeland's households, if you will. And the State Department did the town plan, bubble plan, all of that, which is now old actually because it's over 10 years. So they would have to take some coordination there too.
Oh no, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Councilmember. Whenever we get into an area where there is both Department of Hawaiian Homelands and county overlays, we work directly with DHHL to make sure we don't conflict with them.
Yeah, thank you.
Council Chair, proposal.
Follow up, kind of, thanks for being here. You mentioned earlier about the identification of those illegal TBRs that are significantly high. When we come across those, are those findings shared with your property so we can make the proper adjustments?
Yeah.
Because it could be one of those that are getting the homeowner exemption.
Yeah, in fact, no, absolutely. So anytime we do a illegal vacation rental notice of violation, it's sent to real property as well. But this past year, we worked with Scott folks because in our investigation, because the one person that's assigned to just keep on scouting was coming across even sometimes legal TVRs. Of course, she's coming across legal TVRs as she scouts the World Wide Web. But what she's coming across is there's some legal TVRs that were not being taxed at the vacation rental rate. So even though it's not an active investigation because they're good on our eyes, this year she began sending each one of those to real property to say, came across this legal vacation rental, we're not shutting them down, but also found that they're not being taxed at a vacation rental rate. So that just started this year.
Isn't part of the TVR license though is to follow all laws and regulations though?
Yeah.
Which would include paying the proper tax class?
Yep.
So would that be grounds to revoke the license?
No, so those ones, she's not, I don't think she's come across any with the TVNCU program.
Oh, okay.
This is straight up in the VDA where because she's going through Airbnb's list of several thousand.
So
and
it
she's
would only be legal ones?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect, thank you.
Councilmember Cowden?
Yes, when we were on the CIP budget, there was the discussion of maybe 10% of our building plans are missing or our permitting plans. So, when I tried to help somebody, I was pleased that it wasn't as hard as I thought it might be by looking at the MLS records. I've done that a couple times now. So I have to go through a friend who is a realtor to get that. Does the planning department must have an MLS license? Do you have one of those?
We do not, but real property does, and anytime we request to go with real property, they help facilitate that.
Okay, so can we figure out a way when we're missing things to just go through them and get that data? Because it seems like it's a flaw on our part. We dropped a ball somewhere. It's probably happened for a whole variety of reasons, right? Including pulling something out one summer and just it not going back in the records.
I've never really thought of it in the terms of a record search request, Councilmember, but it's an absolutely valid point, and I know that not all MLS listings are going to have a zoning permit attached to it, but they may. So I can talk with our team about looking at getting our own license access to MLS for that purpose.
And is there any reason I've asked, I think a year ago, I would like the council to have a license for MLS because then we could do the same thing. That feels like a really good tool. So your team is probably well trained to have that, right? I mean, if your team, do you have anybody who knows how to look at that? Can't be that hard.
I've looked over the shoulder of people at real property.
That's what I'm usually doing, is looking over the shoulder.
But that's something completely valid for us to explore.
Okay.
Because, for all intents and purposes, you just bring this idea up. When we search for and find that it's a lost file, we would absolutely like to cover all bases. And I'll be honest, I never thought of looking at MLS for a file that we're having missing, but we'd be open to it.
Yeah, Because it's like finding a jackpot when you look and it's there.
You know, as far as the MLS, I did, and Councilmember Cotton is right, she did request it. I did go out and try to secure, but there's a requirement that you gotta have a real estate license. You gotta be a realtor or broker. It's not open to the public, so I'm curious as to how real property has it, unless they're using somebody's. It's not available to the public, and as I explained that to you when you asked the last time, so there's you gotta have it's for realtors only. So unless, I don't know how real property has it, but.
I'm not sure.
We're not able to get it.
I have an inactive license. If I activated it,
Then
then
go
would
apply
I
for
be
your
able to?
MLS. You asked us to check, I did, and I'm telling you
Okay.
that it requires a real estate license. That's why we didn't get it. We didn't get it because they didn't want to get it. We didn't get it because I'm not even allowed to request one because they asked for your realtor license. So
Well, maybe somebody in your department can get one.
somebody,
because
yeah,
it's not that hard to get a realtor license. It's not easy, but it's not hard.
Any other questions for planning?
On the budget.
On the budget?
I mean,
On the
not just the
synopsis.
narrative.
No, yeah, we're in the budget.
Position. So, I mean, 3 of the positions, the way that it's detailed on the vacation report, vacancies report explains itself. So when you have comments, it says return rights position, interviews scheduled, selection made. I don't need to ask about those. The only one, and it's a recent vacancy, so the planner 5 long range, you have it fully budgeted for the beginning of the range from 71,000 to 101,000. It's a new vacancy. Are you getting right on with the recruitment, or you identify someone within, or?
We haven't identified anybody within, nobody within the office qualifies for that position. But we are moving definitely on recruitment. That was opened up in February of this year. So you definitely are moving on it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from members?
Could I just make a comment? For such a small team, you guys do a lot.
Small but mighty.
Small but mighty team. Like I look at the size of the budget for what your long-range planners do and what everybody does on a daily basis. It's really quite an impressive outflow of, and all the money for moving, the move is in the CIP budget. When's that going to start? When's that going to happen?
I was just with Mr. Perry yesterday when he was laying out the chalk lines for the walls.
Okay. Well, with that, at this time, I'd like to call to recess the departmental budget reviews. We will reconvene on Monday, April 7th, 2025 at 9 a.m. For our final day of budget reviews, when we'll hear from Transportation Agency, Housing Agency, Office of Elderly Affairs, Office of the County Auditor, and Office of the County Clerk.
Done.